Greetings everyone and welcome to a new Outriders video. Today we're going to explore a Devastator Anomaly power build that focuses on the Marshal set, and the main three skills that we're using are the Endless Mass, the Gravity Leap and the Boulder Rush. The latest patch brought some welcome changes for the Endless Mass and Boulder Rush skills that we will explore later on as we proceed to the video, but without any further delay, let's proceed and have a look at the armor, stats and mods. In the background you can see all the armor pieces and mods I'm currently running, and in specific we definitely need 3 pieces of the legendary Marshal set in order to get the improved Endless Mass. Although I haven't managed to find the pants yet, I'm going with the boots that have maximum health instead of anomaly power, but the build works even with that. As far as the rest of the epic pieces, they must have anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and then you can either go with status power or skill life leech. Moving to the weapons, we are using of course the all-powerful Fortress mod with a very decent tier 3 damaging mod. In specific I'm using the Shadow Comet. For the secondary weapon we're using the Moaning Winds, enchanted with Fortress once again, and the sidearm also has Moaning Winds and Clip Combustion for maximum AoE damage for our rotation. As far as our talents, after a lot of testing, I found out that investing a lot in the Seismic Shifter tree improves a lot our survivability and damage output. The only small downside is that we miss a node that further decrease 15% our kinetic skills cooldown, and all our skills now have a cooldown of 9 seconds and more. There is of course the option with the first build I tried, maximizing the cooldown reduction for our kinetic skills and investing more in the Vanquisher tree. If we do that, unfortunately, we have to choose between Protected by the Anomaly and Skill Sentry. I do prefer to get the Skill Sentry, and unfortunately if we make either of these two choices, we have to replace one of our mods. I do recommend to replace the Captain Hunter with Damage Absorber in order to have decent survivability. Although by making this change, all our cooldowns are very close to 7 seconds, after some testing I do highly recommend to go with the original plan and go with this spec. And the final note regarding the talents. After some testing, I did find that Red River's nodes are much more useful compared to Bloodbath. Our damaging from the bleed is very low compared to the classic Seismic Shifter builds. We're going for more immediate burst damage, and that's why you can invest in Red Rivers in order to inflict the bleed in higher health enemies and take the time to finish them off before you just apply it again. And in case you have trouble surviving, even though I do believe you won't, you can just invest in more survivability talents such as Into the Fray or Blood Donation. The build has enormous potential to grow even more powerful, and I do believe that there are so many other options for you to choose for armor mods that you can see some in the background, and you can experiment yourselves to see what fits a little better in your playstyle. However, there are certain mods I do recommend to include in all your builds because they increase not only our utility but our DPS exponentially. Starting with Bleed Them All, so we can apply bleed with our opening skill. Wide Horizons will increase the Endless Mass radius by 25%. High Intensity will increase the anomaly power damage by 33%, and Despair is one of the best because it will help us deal 1.5 times extra anomaly damage to the enemies. The rotation is actually quite simple. We open up with Endless Mass and immediately use 2 Gravity Leaps and follow up with a Boulder Rush to the enemies that have gathered from the Endless Mass. If any of the enemies survived, we are going to use our weapon mods, the Moaning Winds and the primary weapon mod in order to fill in the gaps. You can also use the weapon mods in combination with Endless Mass in case your other skills are not pulled down, and you can just use the Gravity Leap to catch up some enemies that are left behind the map or are further away. Thanks to the new patch changes, the Endless Mass can now be used more aggressively against single targets. We can now encase, for example, a boss. It will be immobile for a couple of seconds and we can still damage them with our gravity leap, boulder rush and weapon mods. And speaking of boulder rush, thanks to the new changes, you can now end it early just in case you miss your targets or you feel so, by pressing once again the skill button. And for a couple of final tips, sometimes the most annoying thing that can happen is against bosses or very high health enemies, they will be immune to endless mass, and for that reason you won't be able to apply bleed to them in the normal way. For that case you have to apply it by just meleeing them in close range, and you will have to use the gravity leap and boulder rush plus the weapon mods as your main sources of DPS. It's very important to keep the bleed up, especially against bosses, for two reasons. Extra 25% damage thanks to our tier 3 armor mod, and second for our survivability, because the skill life leech is our #1 source of healing. To conclude this video, I do believe this build is very impressive, it's very good, I do fall in love with it, although I have a pure seismic shifter Devastator bleeding build. This is more intense, the burst damage is awesome, the endless mass gathering the enemies and just gravity leap them twice and boulder rush watching them just fall apart is amazing. And I do believe this build will be all-star in a group, because you will help the group to just spread the damage from amongst the enemies that you hit with endless mass. Currently I'm trying to build a Vanquisher Devastator build thanks to the new changes, although I do think the status set is the way to go, because otherwise the damage is quite good, but we still have some problem surprisingly with our survivability. I really hope you enjoyed the video and that this build with the Devastator will help you solo challenge tier 15 expeditions even easier. Feel free to like if you liked, and you can subscribe to stay tuned for more upcoming videos for Outriders and other video games, and as always I wish you all a wonderful day.
you